Hi, I'm Zibbybug, but you can just call me Zibby or Bug, and I'm not used to talking in my videos, but as you could see from the title, I wanted to design the characters from the new Warriors arc coming out. And, we don't have much to go off for them, basically just some cover art, which isn't always the most reliable, and some pretty vague descriptions of the plot and characters. But we don't know much about them personality-wise, and although we have their designs from the cover, again, it's not that reliable. We basically just know their general colors. For Flamepot, though, and Sunbeam, we at least know their parentage and some of the people they're related to, so that did help a lot when I was designing them. And this is something that Moonkitty also talked about in her video about them, so if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's pretty good. Something I will note is that I didn't really want any of these characters to look like any of the previous protagonists we've had in Warrior Cats. So, like, for Frostpaw, I kind of imagined her initially looking quite a bit like Dovewing, like pretty soft and round, like most people draw her. But I really didn't want her to look like Dovewing, so I tried my best to reimagine her a little different, which is why I gave her, like, pointier fur, and also, I imagined most River Clan cats as Maine Coons, so I tried to design her after that. She's a lot smaller than a typical Maine Coon, but I figure she'd probably grow up to be pretty big, and she starts off the arc pretty young, so that's why I wanted her to be so small. For Sunbeam, there were a few things to note, I knew that she had a lighter marking on her chest, kind of like Needletail does, so I wanted to make sure I included that. And I also thought it'd be fun to play around with ideas for her personality, since she's probably the one we know the least about. I thought it'd be different if she was really different from Needletail, and maybe Shadow Clan cats talked about her sister's legacy a lot, and she really hates it. Like, I want Sunbeam to be kind of a calm and collected cat who's maybe kind of controlling and really wants to prove herself as a competent warrior and not rebellious or spunky like her sister. So for Frostpaw, I did want her to look different from Dovewing, and in Moonkitty's video she pointed out that it looked like Frostpaw might have had some striping or calico markings, which would make for an interesting design, so I tried to include some yellow stripes and things that I was going to polish up when I did her final color, but the yellow just didn't look good to me with the gray, and from the covers it's pretty clear to me, or at least I'm assuming she's going to be gray, and I didn't want to change that too much, so instead I was trying to brainstorm different ways to make her patterning more unique. And when I was looking at the cover, there's a part of her front leg, and it's probably just the lighting, but it looks like there's lighter gray or white going up her shoulder, and even though it's probably just weird shading, I think it would make for a pretty interesting design, so I decided to use it and cover her shoulder in, like, that white pattern that I saw. There's not much else to say for Frostpaw. She's a medicine cat apprentice, so I wanted to give her the little sprout on her ear, because I thought that was pretty indicative of wanting to prove herself and growing up, and I haven't designed any medicine cats who have, like, a sprout on their ear. I've given them leaves and other friends before, but never one that looked like that, so I just thought that would be pretty nice. And then, from what I can tell from the cover, her eyes are green, and I decided to keep that, but they could have been blue because of the lighting, so I decided to lean into more of a aqua green turquoise color, if that makes sense. I added some darker gray stripes on her legs, and then a marking on her back that's supposed to kind of look like an eclipsed moon, like on some of the soul designs. I just thought it might be interesting, especially if she has something to do with StarClan, considering the title of the series. And that's the finished Frostpaw. Okay, so for Sunbeam, I knew that I definitely wanted her to be pointy, and I didn't want her to be smiling in this picture because I've come up with this sort of solid headcanon in my mind of what her personality is like, and honestly, if the books contradict it, I'm going to be a little upset, even though I completely made this up and none of it's canon. But I wanted her to kind of look like she was almost looking down on the other two, but also she might just be scowling because someone's comparing her to her sister, and she doesn't want that. For her cover design, there really wasn't much to go off. I could tell that she was light brown, but that's about it. And when I heard she was light brown or ginger, I knew immediately that whatever I drew might end up looking a little bit like leaf pearl or squirrel flight. And I realized a little too late after drawing her that she does kind of look like leaf pearl, and I think it's the pelt color combined with the eye color and the white muzzle and chest that she has that's on most leaf pearl designs. Even though she looks nothing like my leaf pool design, she definitely looks like a leaf pool design. But that aside, I'm actually really happy with how she turned out. I think she's pointy and a little bit angry, and I think she's gonna do great. One last thing about Sunbeam's design that I will note is that I did want her silhouette to look a lot like how I imagine Needletail's, even though I haven't designed Needletail yet. I want them both to be pointy and kind of, like, lithe, if that makes sense, and very strong looking, and I think I achieved that with her, but she's definitely not happy about it because it's another thing that people use to compare her to her sister. Okay, now on to Flamepot. I don't have much to say here since he's pretty much just a plain black cat, which I was watching Moon Kitty's video and she was saying how it'd be interesting to have a plain black cat as a main character again, since we haven't really had one since Hollyleaf, if I remember right. And even though I wanted to give him a more interesting design, like different patterns or something, I did agree with the sentiment that it would be really interesting to have a main character that's just a completely black cat, no patterning or anything. So that's what I did, although because his name is Flamepot and in his description pretty much all it says is that he's worried about living up to Firestar's legacy, I definitely wanted to include some flame elements, so I decided to shape his fur on his tail and cheeks and forehead like flames. And I toyed around with the idea of possibly giving him a sort of lighter black or dark gray as smoke coming out from like a lower half that would be darker. But I really did just want to keep him as a plain black cat. So I scratched the idea, kept the flame silhouette shapes on his fur, and just gave him one shade of black, and the only patterning I did on him was actually just a slightly darker color for his eyebrows, which I put on every cat. And then the last thing of note for Flamepot is just that he has orange eyes from what we could see from the cover, and I definitely wanted him to look like a cryptid leaning into the full black cat thing. So I gave him the orange eyes, but I leaned them way more into red, sort of like Shadow Sights, although Shadow Sights I imagine being pure red. Played around with the idea of him having darker whites of his eyes and lighter irises, but that kind of made him look blind, like J-Feather, and I don't think that he is. So scrapped that, finished his eyes, gave them a cryptid look, and then I just had to do a simple background and the drawing was done.